Well, joining us now to discuss the dissolution of the NDDC board by President Tinubu and why the Laje Riverine people in Ondo State deserve inclusion in the new board whenever it is constituted, as a lawyer, Eniola Ayenuberu. Good to have you on Newsday. It's good to have you.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on your station.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very grateful.
That's great. Okay, so let's talk about this allegation that has followed the dissolution of this board. Some people are, some groups have come out to say that these executive members were given preferential treatment. But besides the fact that, there's been the argument that, the leader of this group had only been there for 6 months, and even a setback of the NDDC's, the frequent change of the person at the helm of affairs. The president also seems to have a backing in section 12, subsection 1, 2, and 3, pointing out that the 2 executive directors and staff of the commission of this can stay for the presidency's tenure. Is that? I mean, you're a lawyer. Is the president backed with the law, with this decision that he has made to retain these 3 people?
Thank you very much. The dissolution of the NDDC board is a welcome development. However, there are a lot of issues. And to start with the foundation, in law, you cannot place something on nothing. Definitely it will not stand. Right from inception, there are a lot of agitations, litigations in courts, federal high courts, Abuja, Akure, and so many other places, engage a lot of the nominees. Take, for instance, the chairman of the dissolved board, Loretta Oneche. There were a lot of court actions against her. In Ondo State, where I came from, a larger local government, there are a lot of issues. There were a lot of complaints, petitions before the 9th Assembly. But there was a kangaroo committee that led to the confirmation of the board. For instance, the man representing Ondo State on the board of NDDC as executive director is not from oil-producing areas. The law is very clear. Section 2(1) is very clear of the NDDC Act, and Section 12(1). If you are not an indigene of oil-producing area, you cannot be a member of NDDC board. That as it may. The dissolution of the board by the president is a welcome development. However, there are issues. The practice in NDDC, as created by the law, is very simple. The retention of the 2 executive directors is a misnomer. It's against the law that established NDDC. The law is very clear. I will read it to you. It's here. The act is very clear. Those that can be a member of the board. And once a board is dissolved, all members of the board, they cease to exist. But in this case, there was a letter written by Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Niger Delta. That letter is an aberration. It has never happened in the history of NDDC, where a Permanent Secretary will write a letter to order a candidate or nominee, whatever he called it, to go back to the board.
All right, if I may come in here, do you think that is legal? Because that is one of the arguments that the Niger Delta Affairs Ministry in its own memo created exception portfolios.
With due respect, my dear, the Niger Delta Ministry is not part of government ministry that is included.
So do you think to
oversee the affairs, the NDDC is directly under the presidency, not under Ministry of Niger Delta. The Permanent Secretary does not have any power anywhere. It's against the Constitution and the law, the act that established NDDC.
Okay, so with this scenario now, obviously there's a misnomer, as it were. The presidency has already issued its own, order, and of course we're seeing another from the Niger Delta Ministry. So,
my dear, I will show you a document here.
Okay.
A letter written by the Permanent Secretary, Shaib Begori. You can have a look at it.
Okay.
Directed the Executive Director, Finance and Administration, and Executive Director, Project, who is not even an indigene of oil producing area, for you to go back to NDDC, the president have to nominate to the National Assembly. Then the Senate will screen and confirm before you can be a director or whatever position, either as a state rep or FD in the NDDC. In this scenario, there's nothing like that. This letter written by the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, is a usurpation of the office of the president. You see, my brother, I must tell you one thing. Something that be happening in this country, and people take it for granted. This is how they misled President Buhari, that led to the illegal board. I call it illegal because their nomination and confirmation is against the law. Ogumola, for instance, there are a lot of cases against him pending in court. I know about 3 cases pending against Ogumola in court. Then where does the man have the power to nominate him to represent NDDC on the board? All right. You see, excuse me, sir, excuse me. Just one more, just one point. Yeah. These are issues that were creating a lot of crisis within the Niger Delta region. When you pick a wrong person, the people will not last. Presently, for we in Ondo State, keeping quiet does not mean that we are happy. But just a respect for a constitutional authority that we want Mr. President to take a rightful decision as far as NDDC is concerned. In fact, if I may suggest, the president should appoint a special advisor on NDDC matter that will report to the president, unlike what they did to Buhari. Because there are a lot of people within the system that I see them as pariahs at the corridors of power.
Okay, let me come in here, Mr. Eniola. You know, the dissolution of the NDDC board provides an opportunity for restructuring and improved governance. Now, the Ilaje Riverine people in Ondo State have for a long time been advocating for the inclusion in the NDDC board. Now, I want to ask you this. How can their involvement to the board contribute to bridging the development gap in the region and ensuring that the specific needs and concerns are adequately addressed?
One of the reasons why this was created is to bring governance to the oil communities where oil explorations are taking place. There are 3 geopolitical zones that form the 9 states that constitute NDDC. We have the Southeast, Abia and Imo State. The South-South, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, Edo, and River State. In Southwest, we have only Ondo State. And in Ondo State, it's only one local government that qualifies Ondo State to be the 5th largest oil production in Nigeria. Right from the creation of NDDC, the South-South, they have had that time as managing directors, chairman, and executive directors. Delta, they have 2 terms, managing director and various executive directors. Bayelsa, the same thing. Rivers, the same thing. Now, it is the turn of Ondo State. Because the first there's something in NDC they call the Big 4. The Big 4 are Delta, Akwa Ibom, Rivers, and Bayelsa. If the Big 4 they have been having it for the past 23 years, it's not the turn of the number 5. We have the 5th in terms of quantum of production of oil in Nigeria.
All right, if I may come in here, is there some kind of formula that dictates who heads what within the NDDC? And, you know, you're advocating for, you know, at least Ondo should also have a greater say here. So how will that happen?
The act is very clear. It talks about rotation of the executive position.
So why hasn't it been followed over time?
Because there is a grave injustice in the presidency and even in the National Assembly. So I will give you an example. Okay. When Ogumola was nominated to be a executive director on the board of NDDC. The 3 senators from Ondo State, they wrote, they protested against his nomination that is not from oil producing area. But the Senate, they did some kangaroo screening. There was no public hearing. And they confirmed Ogunmola. These are part of the injustice. This is the time. It's our time in Ondo State to produce the next managing director. We qualify morally and legally to produce the next managing director, because all the big four, they have had that choice. They have that stake on several occasions. The first board, the second board, the third board, the fifth board have been rotating within the 4 states.
It is also said that a major setback of the NDDC itself is this frequent change of leadership.
Yes.
So to a large extent, how can we move forward on this?
I've suggested that this current president has a vision for NDDC. But for him to actualize that, one, the law have to be followed. The law have to be followed. And it's because of the high level of corruption within the NDDC itself, the National Assembly, and the presidency. Politicians in Nigeria have seen NDDC as a conduit pipe to Sanfone Fund for their elections and whatever. I'll give you an example. In Ondo State, the chairman, House Committee on NDDC in the 9th Assembly did a lot of injustice to the oil-producing communities. In the award of contracts, even in employment. About 36 employment, only 5 from Ilaje local government. The only oil-producing state in Ondo State, in the whole of the entire Southwest, only 5 from Ilaje local government. The next local government, Eseodo, had just 1. You can see the level of injustice that politicians are playing. Mr. President should engage a special advisor, a career officer that work with him.
Okay, I'd like to come in here, and I feel your passion, and I want to be able to look beyond even just the representation of the Ilaje people. What other measures do you think are necessary to address the broader governance and development challenges facing the Niger Delta region and ensure that the NDDC itself operates within its line of mandate, within its mandate?
If I may suggest, the president should not be in a hurry. There is a forensic audit report that have to be implemented. It's a way forward so that we don't have what we experienced during the last administration. During the last administration, we always have sole administrator, suspended managing directors. There's no unity within the government cycle itself. And people like the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Niger Delta, the NDDC will be taken away entirely from the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. The NDDC is an autonomous commission directly under the presidency. In a situation whereby the SGF is the one controlling NDDC, the permanent secretary, the minister of Niger Delta Ministry, all of them, they combine together to constitute a grievous evil against the people of Niger Delta. In terms of contract, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of employment, there is no sense of belonging. The people in the Riverine area are keeping quiet just to allow this president see what he can do to ameliorate the sufferings of the people in Niger Delta and to bring sanity to NDDC. The forensic audit report is pending. It's just there on the table lying. No implementation. The Buhari government, they rush and constitute an illegal board. I call it legal because what they did is contrary to the provisions of the NDDC Act. Okay. I will tell you something. Right. That Ministry of Niger Delta is not part of NDDC affairs. I will read to you section 2(1). From A to H. The people, including ministry, we have 2 ministries that is to be represented on the board of NDDC, Ministry of Finance and Environment. There's no letter from Ministry of Environment to appoint anybody to NDDC. Nothing from Finance. So if the permanent secretary continue the way he did under Buhari administration, they will mislead this government. And once they mislead this government, there will be agitation from various stakeholders within the Niger Delta region. All
right. Definitely we're still going to have a new board at some point. So what are your expectations in terms of the makeup of that board itself and what it's supposed to do in the future?
The handlers of Mr. President in respect of Niger Delta affairs, particularly NDDC, should follow the extant law that established NDDC. What does the law say? What is the procedure of appointment of members of the board? Section 2(1) is clearly, very, very clear. Those that can consider. And before you can qualify, either as a state representative or executive director or managing director or chairman, you, number 1 requirement, you must be an indigene of an oil producing area. One of the problems, once you bring somebody that is not familiar to the environment as executive director, what will he do? I'll give you an example. In Ayenuberu, in Nigeria local government, Ondo State, Ogumola went to Ayenuberu. He doesn't even know anything. He knows nothing about seeing caution.
Well, let's stick to.
I'll give you an example.
Let's just stick to
somebody who read history. You say he should be the one that will go and prevent seeing caution. He's not a geologist. He's not have any geologists in his cabinet. So what is he going to do? It's failure. And the level of corruption there, the reason, I will tell you one of the reasons why the permanent secretary sent the 2 directors down back to NDDC is for them to cover the evil deeds they have done during the last administration. That is the intention. Because if you read the letter, he's not saying I'm being directed by Mr. President or being directed. He usurped the power and gave a directive. These are some of the corruptions we have there. Because they are there just to draw from the pipe whatever they can draw before a new board will come in. A new board will come in, it's a welcome development. But we have maintained that this new board that is coming is for Ondo State. We qualify legally and morally. And we are a very good supporter of this government. We get this government a very large number of votes to come into power. So Ondo State should be considered first before any other state among the 9 states in Nigeria.
You keep talking. Oh,
that's still reserved. I think the president still has the last say on that. In this regard, and I'm sure a whole lot will be looked into all of that. But you have.
I mean, you've spoken about the qualifications of the Ondo people, and we do know the 3 members of the board that have been not been part of the dissolution that has taken place. So I'm just curious to know if there are, particular figures or, personalities that come to mind that would, do justice if they were to join the board. Are there certain people right now that have contributed, even on the back end with the NDDC, that you think should make it to the board?
Representation on the board. We need competent persons. And if you recall, there is this saying in Nigeria that Ondo is where you have good people when it comes to management in economics. We have a lot of professors. We have competent engineers that live within the people and they know the impact. They feel the impact together. Take for instance, I'll give you an example. I'm from Nigeria local government. Just last week, our ancestral home was being removed. We want to move from where we are. Presently, we don't have any other place to go because we are still looking for land. So if somebody from that environment is made the MD, he will know what to do to address the ecological problem and attend to the yearnings of the people. Somebody who is living within the people is the one that will know better how the people feel and how to better the lot of the people, not a stranger, not a foreign body.
All right. Hopefully you can do this. Okay, I've just been told we're out of time. Mr. Eniola, Ayenuberu, I'd like to thank a lawyer. I'd like to thank you for your thoughts on the dissolution of the NDDC board by President Tinubu. Hopefully, your suggestions will be taken into consideration as well.